At the beginning of the drama, we are introduced to the female lead, Ji-hoo. Ever since she was born, she was treated differently by her family simply because she was a girl. Her parents never celebrated her birthday, not even once. In their family, sons were considered far more important than daughters. Ji-hoo also had a younger brother, and unlike her, he received all the love and attention from the family. When Ji-hoo finally turned 20 years old, she celebrated her birthday for the very first time in her life. However, it wasn't with her family. It was with her friends. On that special day, she made a wish that one day she would become a successful writer. Years later, she did manage to become a writer, but not the famous novelist she had dreamed of becoming. Instead, she worked as an assistant writer for small television dramas and series. After working continuously for 3 months without a break, she was finally granted some vacation time. Excited to rest, she decided to return home. At that time, Ji-hoo was living in a small apartment with her younger brother. As soon as she arrived home, she began cleaning the entire place. Meanwhile, her brother was still asleep. Wanting to wake him up, Ji-hoo headed toward his room. But the moment she opened the door, she was completely shocked. Inside, she found her brother romantically spending time with a woman. The sight startled her so much that she immediately turned around and ran away. Her brother quickly chased after her, trying to stop her. Ji-hoo told him that she wouldn't come back inside unless he first sent that woman away. However, her brother casually replied that the woman wasn't going anywhere because she was actually his wife. Then he dropped an even bigger bombshell. He revealed that Ji-hoo was soon going to become an aunt. Hearing this left Ji-hoo absolutely speechless. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Romance and dating weren't even part of her own life. Yet somehow her younger brother had gotten married without ever telling her. Nobody in the family had informed her about it either. But things became even more shocking when she later learned something else. Their father had already transferred ownership of the family apartment entirely to her younger brother. Ji-hoo couldn't understand why she was always excluded from everything. Feeling frustrated and heartbroken, she met her friends at a restaurant and shared everything that had happened. After listening to her story, her friends encouraged her to stand up for herself. They told her that she deserved equal rights and that she should demand her share from her father instead of remaining silent. Meanwhile, at the same restaurant, we are introduced to the male lead, Se-hee. He was there with his housemate, and the two were in the middle of a heated argument. Se-hee was furious because his housemate never took proper care of the house. The argument became so intense that it almost turned into a physical fight. Fortunately, before things could get out of control, several people stepped in and calmed them down. Later, Se-hee went to work, where his boss informed him that he would need to stay for overtime. However, there was a special reason why Se-hee refused. His boss was also his best friend, so he spoke honestly. He explained that he couldn't work overtime because his cat was alone at home and needed to be fed. No matter what, he wanted to return home on time to take care of his beloved pet. On the other hand, encouraged by her friend's advice, Ji-hoo finally gathered the courage to confront her father and ask for the rights she deserved. But when she arrived home, she discovered yet another reason why her position in the family had become even weaker. Her sister-in-law was expecting a baby boy. Since Ji-hoo's family had always favored sons above everything else, she immediately realized what this meant. Once the baby was born, all the family's attention and inheritance would revolve around him as well. At that moment, Ji-hoo understood that she truly had no place left in that house. Feeling helpless, she sat down and started searching online for a room she could rent. Just then, her mother quietly approached her and secretly handed her some money. She told Ji-hoo not to tell anyone about it. Although Ji-hoo's father never showed her much love, her mother cared deeply for her and always worried about her future. Because Ji-hoo didn't have much money, she searched only for cheap and affordable places to stay. However, every room she found had serious problems. Some were in terrible condition, while others were barely livable. In fact, there were even rooms where once you closed the door, it wouldn't open properly again. Finding a decent place within her budget seemed almost impossible. However, the problems with those cheap rooms didn't end there. Some rooms had doors that wouldn't open properly once they were closed, while others had doors that couldn't even be locked correctly. Since Ji-hoo was a woman living alone, safety was a major concern for her. She knew she couldn't just move into any random place, so she needed to find a better solution. Meanwhile, our male lead, Se-hee, was talking to his boss and best friend. He explained that since he spent most of his time at work, he needed someone to take care of his cat while he was away. His friend immediately reassured him, saying, "Don't worry about it, I'll find someone suitable for the job." At the same time, Ji-hoo received a call call from one of her friends. Her friend excitedly told her that she had found a perfect opportunity. A person was looking for a housemate and wouldn't even charge any rent. The only condition was that the owner was a bit strict. Whoever stayed there would have to follow a few house rules, keep everything clean, and do things on time. Since Ji-hoo desperately needed a place to stay and couldn't afford anything better, she immediately agreed. Naturally, she assumed the owner was a woman. In the next scene, after packing all of her belongings, Ji-hoo arrived at her new home. One of her responsibilities would be taking care of the owner's cat, which turned out to be incredibly cute. Keeping the house clean wasn't difficult for her at all because she had been doing household chores since childhood. Compared to everything she had gone through growing up, maintaining a clean apartment felt easy. However, there was one strange thing. Ji-hoo had never actually met the owner of the house, and the owner hadn't met her either. The only thing she had seen was a photograph. In that photo was a woman, so Ji-hoo naturally assumed that the woman in the picture was the owner of the apartment. On the other hand, Se-hee also had the wrong impression. He believed that the new tenant living in his house was a man. In his mind, there was absolutely no way he would ever agree to share a house with a woman. The thought itself seemed impossible to him. When Se-hee returned home that evening, he noticed that everything was perfectly organized. The apartment was cleaner than ever, and all the chores had been completed exactly as instructed. Yet despite living under the same roof, the two still hadn't met. Whenever Ji-hoo was asleep, Se-hee was awake, and whenever Se-hee went to sleep, Ji-hoo was already up and going about her day. Their schedules were completely opposite, which was why they continued missing each other. Instead of talking face to face, they communicated through handwritten notes. One day, Ji-hoo found a letter waiting for her. In it, the owner suggested that they have lunch together. Excited to finally meet the person she believed was her landlady, Ji-hoo headed to the office address mentioned in the note. After arriving, she immediately spotted the same woman she had seen in the photograph. Convinced that this woman was the owner of the apartment, Ji-hoo approached her and cheerfully suggested that they have lunch together. Unfortunately, the woman responded in an extremely rude manner. What Ji-hoo didn't realize was that this woman wasn't the owner of the house at all. She had completely misunderstood the situation. As she was leaving the office feeling confused and embarrassed, she accidentally bumped into Se-hee. Neither of them realized who the other person was. Meanwhile, poor Se-hee was sitting patiently, waiting for the housemate he had invited to lunch. He expected the two of them to meet and eat together for the first time. But Ji-hoo never showed up because she had mistaken someone else for the owner and left before figuring out the truth. Later that night, Ji-hoo went out for dinner with her co-workers. Among the employees at her company was a man named Young-soo. Ji-hoo had secretly liked him for quite some time. In fact, she had even convinced herself that Young-soo probably liked her back. She was simply waiting for the day he would finally confess his feelings. The moment he proposed, she had already decided she would accept without hesitation. Coincidentally, Se-hee was also at the same restaurant that evening, having dinner with his own colleagues. At one point, Young-soo called Ji-hoo aside and led her to a quiet corner of the restaurant. The moment he did that, Ji-hoo's heart started racing. She was certain that this was it. She believed Young-soo was finally about to confess his feelings to her. While the two were talking, Se-hee happened to walk past them. Ji-hoo and Young-soo continued their conversation for quite a while, making her even more convinced that a confession was coming. But in the end, it never happened. After talking for a long time, Young-soo simply left without confessing anything. Ji-hoo was left standing there, disappointed and confused. Meanwhile, Se-hee had gone outside and was watching a football match on a large screen. Feeling a bit down after her failed expectations, Ji-hoo wandered outside and sat nearby. Before long, she found herself watching the match alongside him. When a goal was scored, Ji-hoo became incredibly excited. Without even realizing it, she celebrated a little too enthusiastically and got much closer to Se-hee than a complete stranger normally would. Se-hee found this behavior somewhat annoying because he wasn't the type of person who enjoyed unnecessary interactions with strangers. However, since they didn't know each other, he chose not to say anything. At that very moment, Young-soo was standing outside nearby, watching everything from a distance. At that moment, Se-hee noticed that Ji-hoo seemed distracted and told her, "Why don't you go back to your boyfriend?" Ji-hoo immediately replied that she didn't have a boyfriend at all. Just then, a young woman walked up to Young-soo and wrapped her arms around him affectionately. The moment Ji-hoo saw that, everything became clear. Young-soo already had a girlfriend. Her heart instantly shattered into pieces. For years, she had convinced herself that he liked her, her, and she had been waiting for him to confess. But now she realized that all of those hopes had been nothing more than her own misunderstanding. Se-hee could tell from her expression that she had just experienced a major heartbreak. Later, Ji-hoo sat alone at a bus stop trying to process everything. Coincidentally, Se-hee happened to pass by. After seeing her sitting there, he was about to leave, saying that she would probably feel uncomfortable if he stayed. However, Ji-hoo stopped him and said, "No, it's fine. You're just a stranger anyway. Besides, we're probably never going to see each other again, so there's no reason for me to feel uncomfortable." Then she finally opened up about what had happened. She explained that for 3 years she had worked alongside Young-soo. Because of the way he treated her, she genuinely believed that he loved her. But now she realized that she had been completely wrong. After listening to her, Se-hee calmly said, "What's done is done. There's no point carrying the pain of the past with you forever. It's better to focus on the present and try to be happy." Before leaving, Ji-hoo reached out for a handshake. Se-hee accepted it without thinking much about it. But suddenly, for reasons even she couldn't fully explain, Ji-hoo did something completely unexpected. She leaned forward and kissed him. And to make things even more shocking, this was Ji-hoo's very first kiss. After doing it, she didn't feel embarrassed at all. In fact, she felt strangely happy. As she walked away, she kept thinking about Se-hee's advice. He had told her to focus on the present, and at that moment, she had simply done what she felt like doing. In her mind, it wasn't a big deal because she was certain she would never see him again. So Ji-hoo happily got on a bus and headed home. Meanwhile, Se-hee was completely frozen. The kiss had happened so suddenly that his brain simply stopped working. He stood there motionless for quite some time, trying to understand what had just happened. The next day, when Ji-hoo returned home, she spotted someone standing near the elevator. It was Se-hee. The moment she recognized him, she was completely stunned. In her mind, she kept screaming, "I thought I was never going to meet this guy again." Se-hee stepped out of the elevator and walked away, while Ji-hoo was so shocked that she almost forgot to get out herself. After recovering from her surprise, she finally made her way back to her room and sighed in relief. "Looks like I managed to escape from him this time," she thought. Unfortunately, poor Ji-hoo had absolutely no idea that the very person she was trying to avoid was actually living in the same house as her. A short while later, both of them finally discovered the truth. Seeing each other inside the apartment left them completely speechless. Neither could believe what was happening. To make sure there wasn't some kind of misunderstanding, Ji-hoo and Se-hee both called their respective friends. After confirming the details, they finally realized the shocking truth. They were housemates. Naturally, Se-hee was furious. He immediately went to confront his friend and demanded an explanation. "Why would you choose a woman as my housemate?" he asked angrily. His friend, however, didn't understand what the problem was. "So what if she's a woman?" he replied. "She's taking excellent care of your cat and keeping the house spotless, isn't she?" That night, when Se-hee returned home, Ji-hoo gathered her courage and apologized for the incident at the bus stop. "I'm really sorry for suddenly kissing you that day," she said. But Se-hee wasn't ready to let it go so easily. "You assaulted me," he replied seriously. "And on top of that, you practically harassed me." Ji-hoo immediately protested. "Honestly, I don't even know what kind of mood I was in that day. But I didn't assault you. I just kissed you." Then she honestly explained her situation. She told him that she didn't have enough money and was only staying there temporarily. As soon as she managed to save some money, she promised she would move out. The following day, Ji-hoo received a new writing project. Unfortunately, Young-soo was also assigned to work on the same project. Naturally, this made her uncomfortable, but she had no choice but to accept it and continue working professionally. From then on, Ji-hoo spent most of her time working hard. Whenever she returned home, she focused on writing and cleaning. Before long, the entire apartment became so clean and organized that it looked almost brand new. Meanwhile, Se-hee continued living according to his strict routine. He was the type of person who planned every aspect of his life. Everything had to follow a schedule. More importantly, he had absolutely no interest in romance, dating, or love. As far as he was concerned, those things only complicated life. One day, after returning home from work, Se-hee immediately noticed something unusual. The apartment was sparkling. Every corner was so clean that it practically shined like a diamond. Everything was perfectly arranged and spotless. In fact, The place looked so immaculate that Se-hee became hesitant to touch anything at all. He was genuinely afraid that if he touched something, he might accidentally ruin the perfect cleanliness Ji-hoo had created. And this turned out to be Se-hee's biggest weakness. Ji-hoo kept the apartment so unbelievably clean and organized that he couldn't bring himself to kick her out, even though he originally wanted to. However, another concern had started growing in his mind. He kept wondering, what if Ji-hoo and I end up falling in love? Wanting to clear up the situation once and for all, Se-hee approached her directly and asked, "Why did you kiss me that night?" Ji-hoo answered honestly. She explained that love and dating require a lot of time, and her life was already filled with enough problems. She had never even been in a relationship before. That night, she had simply been overwhelmed by her emotions and ended up kissing him without thinking. After hearing this, Se-hee nodded and said, "So basically, you kissed me for no particular reason?" Ji-hoo immediately replied, "Pretty much, and honestly, I would never want to date someone I'm living in the same house with." Se-hee looked relieved. "That's great," he said. "You're not my type anyway. That means we can continue living together without worrying about anything." Ji-hoo quickly fired back, "You're not my type either." With that, the awkward tension between them finally disappeared. From then on, they continued sharing the same house peacefully. Sometimes they would even sit together and watch football matches. Little by little, they started becoming comfortable around each other, even though neither of them wanted to admit it. One day, as Ji-hoo was returning home, an older woman arrived at the apartment with her. The woman headed straight into Se-hee's room and asked him, "Who is that girl?" Se-hee casually replied, "Mom, she's just my housemate, nothing more." However, his mother wasn't satisfied with that answer. She sighed and said, "Are you seriously never going to get married? Will I not even get to see your wedding before I die peacefully?" Listening to the conversation from outside, Ji-hoo immediately felt guilty. She assumed Se-hee's mother was upset because a woman was living in the same house as her son. Thinking she was causing trouble for him, Ji-hoo quietly packed all of her belongings and left the apartment. After leaving, she returned to her office and managed to get a tiny room where she could stay temporarily. Meanwhile, when Se-hee later walked toward Ji-hoo's room, he noticed a note attached to the door. The note read, "I'm moving out. Thank you for letting me stay here all this time." On the other hand, Ji-hoo looked completely miserable. Her life felt like it was falling apart. She didn't have a proper home, she didn't have a stable career, and she was still working only as an assistant writer. Everything seemed to be going wrong. Surprisingly, Se-hee wasn't feeling much better either. For some reason, the apartment felt unusually empty. He couldn't explain it, but it felt as though he had lost something important. For the first time in a long while, he felt lonely. A few days later, Ji-hoo was sleeping inside the tiny office room she had been given. Late at night, Young-soo arrived there in a drunken state. He began acting inappropriately and tried to take advantage of the situation. The incident left Ji-hoo deeply hurt and shaken. Unable to stay there any longer, she left the office and wandered outside alone. It was already past 1 in the morning. She had nowhere to go, no place to sleep, and no one she could rely on. Exhausted, sleepy, and heartbroken, she started crying. "My luck is really that terrible," she thought. "I don't even have a place where I can sleep peacefully." Not knowing where else to go, her feet unconsciously carried her to the one place where she had once felt comfortable, Se-hee's apartment. As she stood outside the building, Se-hee happened to return home. The moment he saw her standing there alone in the middle of the night, he immediately understood that something was wrong. Without asking too many questions, he invited her inside. Even his cat seemed happy to see her again. The moment Ji-hoo entered, the cat ran over and jumped straight into her lap as if it had been missing her all this time. After they settled down, Se-hee gently asked, "You came here this late at night. Did something happen?" Ji-hoo forced a smile and lied. "No, nothing happened. I just had a bad dream, that's all." But Se-hee wasn't fooled. He could tell that something unpleasant had happened to her. He knew she was hiding the truth because she didn't want to talk about it. After sitting silently for a while, Se-hee thought about everything that had happened. The pressure from his family, Ji-hoo's difficult situation, and the strange emptiness he had felt after she left. Then he suddenly looked at her and said something completely unexpected. "If you have some time available, would you marry me?" Hearing those words come out of Se-hee's mouth, Ji-hoo was completely stunned. She couldn't believe what she had just heard and immediately asked, "Why are you saying something like that?" Realizing how sudden it sounded, Se-hee quickly tried to brush it off and told her to forget about it. Later, Ji-hoo stepped outside to head back to the office. However, it was already very late at night and she couldn't find a single taxi. While she was standing there, her phone suddenly buzzed. It was a message from Se-hee. He told her that it would be difficult to find transportation at that hour and suggested that she simply return to the apartment and rest in her room for the night. The next morning, or at least what Ji-hoo thought was morning, she woke up to the sound of Se-hee's cat demanding food. Looking at the clock, she assumed it was around 5 in the morning. She even wondered why the cat was hungry so early. A little while later, Se-hee returned from work, and Ji-hoo finally realized the truth. It wasn't 5 in the morning at all. It was already 5 in the evening. She had slept for almost 24 straight hours. After everything she had been through, combined with not eating properly, her body had completely given up and forced her to rest. As soon as she woke up, she felt extremely hungry. Her stomach kept making embarrassing noises. When Se-hee noticed this, he invited her to eat with him. Although he didn't admit it, his feelings for Ji-hoo were slowly beginning to change. The more time he spent with her, the more he found himself caring about her. While they were eating, Ji-hoo gathered some courage and asked him directly, "Do you like me?" Without hesitation, Se-hee replied, "Not at all." Then he explained the reason behind his marriage proposal. He told her that his mother constantly pressured him to get married. If Ji-hoo agreed to marry him, his mother would believe he was finally settled down and would stop bothering him. On top of that, he already needed someone to take care of the apartment and the cat, which Ji-hoo was doing perfectly. At the same time, she would benefit as well because she would have a place to stay without worrying about rent. In short, he was suggesting a contract marriage. "If you're interested," Se-hee said, "you can think about it and let me know." Before Ji-hoo could make any decision, her boss suddenly called her in for a meeting. When she arrived, she was shocked to see Young Soo sitting there, the very same man who had behaved inappropriately toward her that night. Instead of supporting Ji-hoo, the boss tried to cover up the entire incident. He was more concerned about protecting the company's reputation than seeking justice. He told Ji-hoo that Young Soo had been drunk and that incidents like this weren't a big deal. "These things happen between men and women all the time," he said. Hearing that made Ji-hoo furious. She looked straight at him and said, "I'm a woman, and I deserve at least a little respect. What Young Soo did was sexual harassment, and now he's sitting here in front of me as if nothing happened." Then she stood up and continued, "I don't want to work at a company like this." With that, Ji-hoo walked out of the meeting. Outside, she couldn't hold back her tears. She had just lost her job and had no idea what she was going to do next. But at the same time, she felt strangely proud of herself. For the first time in her life, she had stood up for herself instead of remaining silent. Later, she met her friends and spent the evening drinking with them, trying to forget all of her worries. They laughed, talked, and tried to cheer her up. However, when the night ended, reality hit her once again. Every one of her friends had a home to return to. They all went back to their own houses. Ji-hoo, on the other hand, had nowhere to go. No home, no job, no place where she truly belonged. Eventually, she returned to Se-hee's apartment to collect her belongings. Since she had lost everything in the city, she decided it was finally time to give up and return to her hometown. Before leaving, she spoke to Se-hee one last time. "You asked me to marry you that day," she said, "but there are plenty of women out there. You'll easily find someone willing to agree to a contract marriage." However, Se-hee's response caught her completely off guard. He looked at her seriously and said, "I don't want a contract marriage with some other woman." Then Se-hee said something that completely changed the situation. "I want to have a contract marriage with you," he told her. "For some reason, I like you." This was the very first time Se-hee had openly said something like that to anyone. Hearing those words left Ji-hoo speechless. Later, while sitting alone at the bus station, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Throughout her entire life, she had always felt unwanted by the people around her. Yet now, for the first time, someone was actually choosing her. Even if it was because of practical reasons, someone still wanted her by their side. As she sat on the bus preparing to leave the city, those thoughts kept running through her mind. Suddenly, she looked out the window and noticed someone running toward the bus. It was Se-hee. Ji-hoo immediately assumed he had come to stop her from leaving, but she was wrong. Se-hee had actually come to return some important documents that she had accidentally left behind at his apartment. Just before the bus was about to depart, Ji-hoo suddenly got off and ran toward him. Then she asked him directly, "Do you want to marry me?" "Answer quickly, the driver is already angry because I'm making everyone wait." Caught off guard, Se-hee looked at her and simply replied, "Yes." The moment she heard that answer, Ji-hoo rushed back to the bus, grabbed all of her luggage, and got off for good. After returning with Se-hee, Ji-hoo reflected on her decision. For a long time, she had believed that love and dating were the most important parts of marriage. But now she realized that what she desperately needed wasn't romance. She needed stability. She needed a home. Most importantly, she needed a place where nobody could suddenly throw her out. For that reason, she agreed to the marriage. The next day, Ji-hoo looked happier than she had in a very long time. Finally, she had secured a place where she belonged. No one would be able to force her out anymore. The next challenge was convincing their families. First, Se-hee went to meet Ji-hoo's family. Before the meeting, Ji-hoo carefully coached him on exactly what to do. She told him, "When you meet my father, kneel down and say, 'I promise to treat your daughter like a princess after marriage.'" Se-hee listened carefully and tried to memorize everything. Later, dressed neatly and looking his best, he arrived to meet Ji-hoo's family. However, the moment he got there, he completely forgot what Ji-hoo had told him to say. Seeing him freeze up, Ji-hoo secretly kicked him from behind, forcing him onto one knee. That kick instantly refreshed his memory. He looked at her father and confidently said, "I promise that after marriage, I will treat your daughter like a princess." Fortunately, Ji-hoo's family was pleased with his answer and agreed to the marriage. Now, only one obstacle remained: convincing Se-hye's family. To start, the two decided to take a couple's photo and send it to Se-hye's mother. During the photo shoot, Se-hye tried incredibly hard to look romantic. Unfortunately, his poses were so awkward that he looked more like a confused horse standing in the middle of a desert than a man in love. Meanwhile, Ji-hoo couldn't help feeling emotional. Ever since she was young, she had dreamed of having a beautiful wedding ceremony. She wanted a proper celebration surrounded by family and friends. One day, she told Se-hee, "There are so many people who get married in grand ceremonies." Se-hee immediately replied, "We're not actually getting married because we're in love. Spending a huge amount of money on a fake wedding doesn't make sense." Ji-hoo forced a smile and agreed. "You're right," but deep inside she was disappointed. Having a wedding ceremony had always been one of her biggest dreams. Realizing that it might never happen, she quietly told herself that it would be better to stop dreaming about things she couldn't have. Later, Se-hee took Ji-hoo to meet his family. Surprisingly, they also managed to convince them about the marriage. Soon afterward, both families gathered together for an official meeting. Most of the relatives were happy about the upcoming wedding. However, Ji-hoo's mother wasn't entirely pleased. Unlike everyone else, she knew exactly how many sacrifices her daughter had made throughout her life. More than anything, she wanted Ji-hoo to experience a proper wedding ceremony instead of a rushed marriage agreement. Because of this, a small argument broke out between the families. After returning home that day, Se-hee thought carefully about everything that had happened. Then he approached Ji-hoo and made a decision. "Our wedding will have a proper ceremony," he said. The moment Ji-hoo heard those words, her eyes lit up with excitement. Without any hesitation, she happily agreed. For the first time in a long while, one of her lifelong dreams was finally about to come true. The following day, Se-hee arrived at the office and casually informed everyone that he wouldn't be coming to work the next day. His coworkers immediately became curious. "Why? Where are you going?" they asked. Se-hee calmly replied, "I have to attend a wedding." Naturally, everyone assumed he was talking about someone else's wedding and asked whose wedding it was. Without changing his expression, Se-hee answered, "I can't miss it because it's my wedding." The entire office was left stunned. In the next scene, the big day finally arrives. Today is Se-hee and Ji-hoo's wedding day. After getting ready, Ji-hoo walks out wearing her wedding dress. The moment Se-hee sees her, he can't take his eyes off her. She looks absolutely beautiful in her white bridal gown, and for a few moments he simply stands there staring. Originally, their friends were supposed to pick them up and take them to the wedding venue. Unfortunately, they got stuck in heavy traffic. Since there was no time to wait, Se-hee and Ji-hoo ended up taking a bus instead. While riding together, Se-hee suddenly pulled out a handkerchief and said, "I brought this with me because my friends told me that when a bride cries during the wedding, the groom is supposed to wipe away her tears." The moment Ji-hoo heard that, she burst out laughing. Then she confidently replied, "Don't worry, I'm not going to cry." Soon afterward, they arrived at the wedding venue. Ji-hoo looked incredibly beautiful in her wedding attire. Everything felt almost like a dream. However, while waiting inside a room before the ceremony, she came across an old diary that her mother had kept for her. As she started reading it, memories from her childhood came flooding back. She remembered all the loneliness she had experienced, all the times she had been neglected, all the moments when she felt unwanted by her own family. The more she thought about her life, the harder it became to hold back her emotions. Eventually, she broke down in tears. She had never imagined that her life would become so difficult that she would end up entering a contract marriage simply because she needed a place to live. At that moment, Se-hee entered the room. When he saw Ji-hoo crying, he didn't interrupt her or tell her to stop. Meanwhile, the ceremony was about to begin. Ji-hoo's friend arrived and told Se-hee to leave the room so she could comfort her friend. But Se-hee refused. He looked at Ji-hoo and quietly said, "If you don't go, then I won't go either." Then he added, "Cry as much as you need to. Let everything out and lighten your heart. I'll stay right here beside you, and I'll stay with you for the rest of my life." Hearing those words, it didn't feel like he was talking about a fake marriage anymore. For a brief moment, it sounded like a genuine promise from a man who truly cared about her. After comforting her, Se-hee gently helped Ji-hoo compose herself and escorted her outside. Standing together in their wedding outfits, they looked absolutely perfect as a couple. Soon, the ceremony began, and all the wedding rituals were completed successfully. However, just as everything was ending, something unexpected happened. Blood suddenly started dripping from Se-hee's nose. Ji-hoo immediately became worried and asked if he was okay, but Se-hee casually brushed it off. "It's nothing serious," he said. "Once we get home and get some rest, it'll be fine." What made Ji-hoo secretly happy wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Instead of saying "my home," Se-hee had said "our home." That small change in wording warmed her heart more than she expected. As the guests started leaving, Ji-hoo's sister-in-law quietly approached her and whispered in her ear, "You're really lucky. Your husband is incredibly handsome." Hearing that made Ji-hoo smile from ear to ear. For the rest of the day, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The following morning, Ji-hoo woke up early and prepared a large breakfast for the two of them. After tasting the food, Se-hee looked genuinely impressed. "You're actually an amazing cook," he told her. By the way, it's important to mention that because this was a contract marriage, they didn't have any romantic wedding night or honeymoon phase. Even though they were legally married, their relationship was still based on an agreement rather than love. Meanwhile, Ji-hoo still didn't have a proper job. Wanting to earn some money, she started searching for work and eventually visited a restaurant hoping to get hired as a waitress. Coincidentally, the restaurant owner was extremely busy at that moment, and the place was packed with customers. This unexpected situation would soon lead Ji-hoo into another new chapter of her life. The restaurant owner was extremely busy that day, so when Ji-hoo arrived looking for work, he barely had time to talk. Instead, he quickly explained that someone named Bok-nam had gone missing. He told Ji-hoo, "Bok-nam disappeared. I gave him a pink t-shirt to wear, and he has brown hair. I got a little angry with him in the kitchen, so he ran away. Can you help me find him?" After hearing the description, Ji-hoo immediately misunderstood the situation. She thought the owner was talking about a pet dog, so she began searching everywhere. She looked under parked cars, called out Bok-nam's name repeatedly, and wandered around trying to find the missing dog. While she was searching, a young man was standing nearby. Coincidentally, he was wearing a pink t-shirt and had brown hair, exactly matching the description. Still thinking Bok-nam was a puppy, Ji-hoo approached him and asked, "Excuse me, have you seen Bok-nam? A really cute puppy has gone missing." The young man couldn't help but smile. Instead of correcting her, he simply said, "Give me your phone number. If I find Bok-nam, I'll call you." The next day, Se-hee and Ji-hoo were walking home together. Ji-hoo looked unusually cheerful and said, "This is actually the first time I've ever gone home with someone. It makes me really happy." After arriving home, she immediately picked up Se-hee's cat and started playing with it. She even gave it a nickname and treated it as if it were her own pet. However, Se-hee suddenly became uncomfortable. The more attached Ji-hoo became to the house and the cat, the more nervous he felt. Finally, he told her, "When you get this close to me, it feels a little uncomfortable. We're not really a couple or a normal husband and wife. It would be better if we each focused on our own lives." Then he gently took the cat out of her arms. Hearing those words hurt Ji-hoo more than she expected. The next morning, she decided to draw a clear boundary as well. While preparing breakfast, she told Se-hee, "From now on, don't say things like our house or our things in front of me. I understand everything now. Nothing here belongs to us. It all belongs to you." Still upset from the previous night, she sat down and started eating by herself. For the first time, she didn't even offer Se-hee his breakfast. Seeing her reaction, Se-hee quietly walked over and sat on the sofa without saying a word. Just then, Ji-hoo received a phone call. Since she was eating, she answered it on speaker. It was the same guy she had met while searching for Bok-nam. The moment he called, he asked her directly, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Ji-hoo glanced towards Se-hee before answering. "No, I don't have a boyfriend." The young man then said, "I found Baknam. Come to the restaurant, you might even get the job you wanted." Soon afterward, Ji-hoo went to meet him. The young man took her inside the restaurant and spoke to the owner. "If you don't hire this girl," he said, "then I'm quitting too." At that moment, Ji-hoo noticed something written on his uniform. The name tag said, Baknam. Everything suddenly clicked. Ji-hoo froze for a second before realizing the truth. "Oh my god," she thought. "I thought this guy was helping me find a dog. Baknam isn't a puppy at all. That's actually his name." Fortunately, thanks to Baknam's recommendation, Ji-hoo got the job. As part of her duties, she had to make deliveries, and Baknam often accompanied her while she learned the work. One day, while they were out together, Se-hee and his coworkers happened to see them. Immediately, Se-hee's colleagues started teasing him. "That must feel terrible," they joked. "Imagine seeing your wife hanging out with another guy." Although Se-hee pretended not to care, their comments clearly bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Meanwhile, during one of their deliveries, Ji-hoo was talking with Baknam. She told him, "I don't have a boyfriend." Then she quickly added, "But I do have a husband." Without hesitation, Baknam replied, "I like you. I really like you. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me whether you have someone or not." His confession completely caught Ji-hoo off guard. Later, when she returned home, she excitedly told Se-hee, "I got a new job." Se-hee looked at her and simply replied, "That's great." But even though his words sounded calm, the thought of Baknam getting closer to Ji-hoo was already starting to bother him in ways he couldn't yet understand. After hearing about Ji-hoo's new job, Se-hee casually brought up something that had been bothering him. "I saw you with that guy," he said. "My coworker saw you too." Ji-hoo immediately looked at him and asked, "Were you jealous when you saw us together?" Without missing a beat, Se-hee replied, "Why would I be jealous?" Of course, Ji-hoo wasn't completely convinced by that answer. The next day, Se-hee and Ji-hoo happened to take the same bus to work. When Ji-hoo got off, Se-hee noticed something interesting. Baknam was already waiting for her at the bus stop. It wasn't a one-time thing either. Baknam was always around Ji-hoo. He treated her incredibly well, stayed close to her whenever possible, and constantly looked for opportunities to help her. Sometimes he would even fix her hair or help her tie it properly. Anyone could tell that he liked her. A few days later, Se-hee's coworkers dragged him to Ji-hoo's restaurant during lunch. As soon as they arrived, Baknam welcomed everyone warmly and provided excellent service. While talking to him, one of Se-hee's coworkers said, "You don't look like someone from an ordinary family. Honestly, you seem like one of those rich guys who hide their identity and work as a waiter for fun." Baknam laughed and shook his head. "No, I'm just from a middle-class family. People think I'm rich because of my expensive motorcycle. But the truth is, I bought the bike before buying a house because riding it was my dream." After leaving the restaurant, Se-hee's coworkers immediately started teasing him again. "That Baknam guy is seriously handsome." Another coworker added, "And from what I've heard, he's become really close to your wife." Then they asked, "Don't tell me you're not jealous." Se-hee calmly replied, "Why would I be jealous?" But his coworker wasn't buying it. "I know exactly how jealous you are," he said. "You're just pretending not to show it." That evening, Baknam gave Ji-hoo a ride home on his motorcycle. Unfortunately for Se-hee, he happened to witness the entire thing. The moment he saw Ji-hoo getting off Baknam's bike, the jealousy on his face became impossible to hide. After Ji-hoo went inside, Se-hee walked straight over to Baknam. Then he said, "You don't need to bring my wife home anymore." Baknam wasn't intimidated at all. "It's dangerous for a woman to come home alone at night," he replied. Se-hee immediately fired back, "And riding on your motorcycle is even more dangerous." Before leaving, Baknam looked directly at Se-hee and said something meaningful. "When I find something I really like, I always make sure I get it, no matter what." The moment he heard those words, Se-hee became even more uneasy. For the first time, he felt like someone was trying to take Ji-hoo away from him. The following morning, Se-hee attended an important meeting at work. His company operated an app, and during the meeting, information about a serial criminal appeared in their database. Surprisingly, the suspect's name was Baknam. However, there was one problem. Nobody knew if it was the same Baknam or a completely different person. Later that day, Se-hee visited the restaurant again. While observing Baknam, he noticed something unusual. Baknam always carried a toolbox with him. Inside were various tools, including hammers and other equipment. Because of the information from the meeting, Se-hee couldn't help becoming suspicious. The more he thought about Ji-hoo spending time with Baknam, the more worried he became. That evening, he asked Ji-hoo, "Why do you work there? Couldn't you find another job?" Ji-hoo shook her head. "I don't really have any special skills. That's why I'm working as a waitress." Se-hee didn't say anything else, but his concern only continued to grow. Later that night, he called Ji-hoo. Trying not to sound suspicious, he said, "When you're coming home tonight, don't ride on the motorcycle. Take the bus instead." Then he quickly added, "Actually, I only called because there's a football match tonight." He was clearly trying to hide the fact that he was worried about her. However, things didn't go according to plan. On her way home, Boknam convinced Ji-hoo to stop for drinks with him. While they were out, Ji-hoo accidentally dropped her phone near a bus stop without noticing. As a result, she couldn't receive any calls or messages afterward. Meanwhile, Se-hee continued investigating the criminal case. What he discovered made him even more anxious. Recently, several young women had been disappearing and getting kidnapped, and with Ji-hoo unreachable, riding around the city with a man he already distrusted, Se-hee couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible might be about to happen. During his investigation, Se-hee learned something even more disturbing about the serial kidnapper. The criminal always carried a toolbox. According to the reports, he used the tools inside that box to brutally attack and murder the women he kidnapped. The moment Se-hee heard about the toolbox, one person immediately came to mind: Boknam. After all, Boknam also carried a toolbox with him almost everywhere he went. The coincidence was enough to make Se-hee extremely uneasy. Meanwhile, Ji-hoo and Boknam were spending time together, talking casually. However, some of Boknam's comments felt strangely unsettling. The way he spoke about certain things made Se-hee even more suspicious. Later that night, Se-hee arrived at the bus stop and noticed something lying on the ground. It was Ji-hoo's phone. The moment he saw it, his heart sank. Now she wasn't answering calls, and her phone had been left behind. Naturally, Se-hee started imagining the worst. At the same time, Boknam was talking with Ji-hoo while holding a couple of drinks. He casually asked, "Your husband seems to care about you a lot. If something happened to you right now, do you think he'd come all the way here to save you?" As he said that, he walked toward his motorcycle, grabbed a bottle opener from his toolbox, and walked back over to open their drinks. At that exact moment, Se-hee appeared. Without hesitation, he grabbed Boknam's arm and stopped him. Then he coldly said, "I don't like hurting people." But instead of attacking Boknam, Se-hee did something completely unexpected. He turned around and smashed Boknam's expensive motorcycle. The bike was severely damaged within seconds. Afterward, Se-hee looked at him and said, "If I beat you up, you'd recover with a little treatment, but repairing this motorcycle will cost you a lot more money." Then he walked over to Ji-hoo and held out his hand. "Let's go home." Ji-hoo quietly took his hand. On the way back, Se-hee never let go. In fact, he held her hand the entire bus ride home. Even after they arrived at the apartment, he was still holding on to her. He was so focused on making sure she was safe that he forgot what he was doing. At one point, he started walking toward the bathroom while still holding her hand. Only then did he realize that he was practically dragging Ji-hoo into the bathroom with him. The realization instantly embarrassed him. Meanwhile, Ji-hoo was equally shocked. She had never seen Se-hee behave this protectively before. The next day, the truth finally came out. The police announced that they had successfully arrested the real toolbox killer. Everyone had suspected Boknam because of the similarities, but it turned out that the criminal was someone else entirely. In fact, the murderer had been using Boknam's identity and personal information to hide his crimes. When Se-hee and Ji-hoo later visited the restaurant, they found Boknam sitting there as usual. Only then did they realize how badly they had misunderstood him. Afterward, Boknam's father called Se-hee and Ji-hoo over. The first thing he asked was, "Why did you destroy my son's expensive motorcycle?" Before the situation could become awkward, Boknam stepped in and calmed his father down. Then he explained everything himself. "The tool I took out wasn't a weapon," he said. "I was just trying to open a beer bottle. I wasn't going to hurt Ji-hoo." Hearing that made the entire situation seem both embarrassing and hilarious. Later, Ji-hoo's friends couldn't stop teasing her. They kept telling her, "Your husband cares about you way more than he admits." And honestly, they weren't wrong. From that point onward, Se-hee started waiting for Ji-hoo at the bus stop almost every day. Whenever she finished work, he would meet her there and walk her home. Little by little, the distance between them began disappearing. The seeds of love had finally started growing. One day, Se-hee visited the restaurant again. The moment he entered, he and Ji-hoo exchanged smiles without saying a single word. Watching them from nearby, even Boknam couldn't help smiling. He could clearly see what was happening between them. Later, after Se-hee left, Boknam said something important to Ji-hoo. "I once asked your husband why he married you." Naturally, Ji-hoo became curious. What did he say? Baknam smiled before answering. The answer honestly touched my heart. Then he repeated Sehi's words. He told me, I married Jihu because I've never met anyone with a heart as kind and beautiful as hers. She's someone who deserves respect. Even if I couldn't love her, I would still respect her deeply. Baknam paused for a moment before continuing. And honestly, I think he's right. Then he looked directly at Jihu and said, a woman deserves respect even more than love. Hearing those words left Jihu speechless, because deep down she realized something important. For most of her life, nobody had truly respected her. But somehow, the man she had entered into a fake marriage with was becoming the first person who genuinely saw her value. And without realizing it, that fake marriage was slowly turning into something very real. After hearing Baknam repeat Sehi's words, Jihu became so happy that it felt like she could see the sun shining in the middle of the night. For someone who had spent most of her life feeling unwanted and unappreciated, hearing that Sehi respected her so deeply meant more than she could put into words. That evening, after returning home, the two of them sat together and looked through their wedding album. But something had changed. Every photo seemed different to Jihu now. No matter which picture she looked at, her eyes always ended up on Sehi. The reason was simple. For the very first time, she had fallen in love. From that day onward, she couldn't stop looking at him. Whenever Sehi woke up in the morning, Jihu would secretly stare at him. It didn't matter if his hair was messy. It didn't matter if he hadn't even washed his face yet. To Jihu, Sehi looked handsome no matter what. Even when he had just rolled out of bed, she thought his face looked brighter than the moon itself. Love really does make people blind, doesn't it? Meanwhile, Sehi wasn't completely oblivious. One morning after leaving home, he kept thinking about the way Jihu had been staring at him. Why was she looking at me like that? He wondered. Did I have something on my face? After thinking about it for a while, he suddenly decided to change his hairstyle. Now, Jihu was already completely smitten with him, so when she saw the new hairstyle, she became even more impressed. She immediately told him, "You look much more handsome with this hairstyle." Naturally, Sehi tried to act unaffected, but deep down he was pleased by the compliment. A few days later, Sehi's mother called Jihu and asked her to come over. It was the anniversary of Sehi's grandfather's passing, and there was a lot of preparation work to be done at the family home. Jihu went there and spent the entire day helping her mother-in-law. Together, they cooked, cleaned, organized things, and handled all the preparations. For the first time, Jihu genuinely felt like a daughter-in-law. When Sehi found out she had gone to help his family, he immediately headed there as well. By the time everything was finished, Jihu was completely exhausted. On their way home, Sehi asked, "Why did you go there and work so hard? You didn't need to put yourself through all that." But Jihu didn't regret it at all. In fact, she was happy. Helping his family made her feel like she truly belonged somewhere. Later that evening, Sehi pulled out some money and handed it to her. "You worked really hard today," he said. "Keep this." Unfortunately, that turned out to be a terrible idea. The moment Jihu saw the money, she became furious. That night, she called him and said, "Come take your money back." Sehi looked confused. Jihu continued, "I helped your family because I wanted to, not because I wanted to get paid. If I work at your house, then you can come work at mine." Suddenly, the money he had offered as a kind gesture had created a whole new problem. The next morning, Sehi found himself riding a bus alone toward Jihu's hometown. He had no choice. If Jihu had worked for his family, then he had to work for hers. When he arrived at the village, everyone was surprised to see him. Unfortunately for Sehi, the village grandmothers and aunties quickly put him to work, and they didn't go easy on him. Poor Sehi ended up doing all kinds of physically exhausting jobs he had never done before in his entire life. As the hours passed, his body felt like it was falling apart. While struggling through the work, he couldn't stop thinking, "Why did I ever try to give my wife money?" Meanwhile, Jihu's younger brother secretly took photos of Sehi working and sent them to her. The moment Jihu saw the pictures, she felt both worried and touched. So she decided to visit the village herself. As soon as Sehi saw her arrive, his entire face lit up. He looked as happy as a child seeing his mother after the last bell rings at school. By that point, every muscle in his body was aching. Seeing his condition, Jihu immediately brought him medicine and helped take care of him. Later that evening, the village uncles gathered around Sehi and forced him to drink far more alcohol than he could handle. Before long, he was completely drunk. Afterward, he and Jihu ended up sitting together by the seaside. The waves rolled in quietly while Sehi kept staring at her. And for the first time, he couldn't stop thinking about one thing. thing. He wanted to kiss her. The problem was that he was too shy to make the first move. So, being drunk and not thinking clearly, he came up with a ridiculous excuse. Looking at Ji-hoo, he said, "The kiss you gave me on the first day wasn't even a real kiss." Ji-hoo looked confused. Se-hi continued, "Even horses kiss better than that." Then he added, "Let me show you what a proper kiss is supposed to look like." Before Ji-hoo could respond, Se-hi leaned forward and kissed her. After pulling back, he looked at her proudly and asked, "See? Do you understand what a real kiss is now?" Ji-hoo pretended to think about it for a moment before replying, "Not really. I don't think I understood it properly." Of course, she understood perfectly, but there was no way she was going to let him off that easily. Then, with a playful smile, Ji-hoo decided to tease him. She leaned forward and gave Se-hi another long kiss. From that point on, their relationship became even more romantic. The awkward distance that had once existed between them completely disappeared, and they slowly started acting like a real married couple. Back at the village, the local uncles once again tried forcing Se-hi to drink alcohol. This time, however, Ji-hoo stepped in. She grabbed the drink from them, drank it herself, and while slightly tipsy declared, "From now on, nobody is allowed to force my husband to drink." Hearing her call him my husband so confidently made Se-hi secretly happy. Soon afterward, they returned to the city and resumed their normal lives. However, Ji-hoo couldn't stop thinking about the kiss they had shared by the seaside. No matter how hard she tried, those memories kept replaying in her mind. A few days later, Se-hi decided to take Ji-hoo on an official date. This was their very first real date together. Throughout the day, Se-hi kept holding Ji-hoo's hand as they walked around the city, and Ji-hoo absolutely loved every second of it. At one point, they stopped by a game booth where Se-hi tried winning a teddy bear for her. Unfortunately, his aim wasn't very good. After several failed attempts, it became obvious that winning prizes wasn't one of his talents. Ji-hoo, on the other hand, was much better at it. Even so, Se-hi eventually managed to get her a teddy bear and proudly handed it over. Because he knew how much she liked it, he genuinely wanted to make her happy. Later, he surprised her with another gift. This time, it was a beautiful pair of diamond earrings. As he handed them to her, he said, "I never really gave you a proper gift. Not even on our wedding day. I've always felt guilty about that." Ji-hoo was overwhelmed with happiness. Everything felt so perfect that she almost wondered whether she was dreaming. That evening, after returning home, Se-hi shyly suggested that they spend the night together in the same room. Ji-hoo became embarrassed, but deep down, this was something she had wanted for a long time. So they lay together, both feeling incredibly shy and nervous. They exchanged a sweet kiss and shared a quiet romantic moment together. The atmosphere was filled with excitement, but before things could go any further, Se-hi suddenly had another idea. He thought their first night together should be even more special. So he left the apartment to buy some beer and prepare everything properly. Unfortunately, his plan completely backfired. By the time he returned, Ji-hoo had already fallen asleep. Seeing her sleeping peacefully, he couldn't bring himself to wake her up. So all of his carefully planned romance went to waste. The next day, however, something much more important happened. He and Ji-hoo sat down together and looked at the contract that had brought them together in the first place. The very agreement that had defined their relationship from day one. Then, they decided to end it. From that day forward, there would be no more contract, no more conditions, no more pretending. Their relationship was finally real. After getting rid of the contract, Se-hi confessed his feelings properly and asked Ji-hoo to stay with him, not as a contractual wife, but as the woman he truly loved. Ji-hoo happily accepted. The two shared a heartfelt kiss, finally embracing the love they had both been trying to deny for so long. And with that beautiful moment, their journey came to a happy ending. The lonely girl who once had no home, no support, and no place where she belonged, had finally found a family, a home, and someone who genuinely loved and respected her. And that's where this wonderful drama ends, with love, happiness, and the promise of a bright future together.